Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. We're going to be doing a balanced druid breakdown. Is it looking juicy? Is it looking spicy? Is it looking fun and potentially competitive? You will have the answers to all of those questions by the end of this video. At first, I was very skeptical of the balanced druid. A lot had been shaken up with the specialization, and then our talents hadn't been touched until the absolute very end. But having now played with it a little bit and fiddled with it, I actually do enjoy the direction that they have taken the talents. It's got a lot more interesting interactions with Star Surge particularly and your hard casted abilities. You're still going to be a Star Surge cannon, as you can see on the screen right now. When you have your cooldowns active, you can blast a bunch of Star Surges out, but the one main component that you're going to need to incorporate with your gameplay that I wasn't early on is mixing in your hard casted spells. You can see that Wrath I just casted hit for 60,000 damage, and the reason for that is that your Star Surges from your set bonus and from some of your talents are either guaranteed to amplify your casted damage or have an RNG chance to amplify that damage even further, which I actually really enjoy. This makes trying to look for opportunities to cast Wrath and Starfire more fun in PvP particularly, which hadn't been the case for a very long time. I think at least since the start of Battle for Azeroth, we'd always been just Solar Beam the healer, Star Surges, I'm out of ammo, run around in a circle until we can do it again. I think that you're going to be able to get away from that, utilizing those talents that amplify the damage of your hard-casted spells. Unfortunately, one of the major downsides of the class at the moment is that from all of the changes and buffs to it, they also changed the cost of Star Surge. So mentally, I've had to grasp this. If you're new to Balanced Druid, it's probably not going to be an issue, but I'd gotten so used to like what period my astral power bar is that means I can shoot a Star Surge, and it's really just not the case anymore. You're gonna have to readjust to it. It also makes the incarnation talent towards the bottom of the tree basically mandatory, at least in PvP, because you're gonna want to reduce the cost of your Star Surges, and that's maybe one of my main criticisms towards the talents. While I do like the hard casted spells, having a lot of cool interactions, looking for moments to fill them in rather than just spamming out instant cast for burst, all of the talents are just this increases your damage by X amount, this increases your damage by X amount, and whichever talent ends up doing the most is probably going to be the talent you go for. That moment right there on the screen with the full moon coming down, I really love Orbit Breaker, and it'll generate you a lot of astral power and just the animation of it, and if you time it during your burst, you can get a crowd control on the healer at that moment. You're going to be feeling really powerful with that effect comboed together. One of the major downsides you're going to notice with Balanced Druid is that your crowd control has almost effectively been stripped away with the way that the Druid talent tree is built at the moment. It's very difficult to get things like Bash or Incapacitating Roar. So if you're used to going for Incapacitating Roar into Cyclone or Bash into Cyclone, it's going to be really tough to lose the valuable damage increasing effects that come from going down the center of the Druid tree or down the right side of the Druid tree in order to get that. So pretty much we're only working with Cyclone and Mass Entangle Solar Beam at the moment. I will have to experiment more with the talents. Here you can see our cooldowns activated. They brought back a lot of cool components from previous expansions like Legion, where when you shoot your Star Surge, you can shoot out this little spirit wolf that flies at the target. I'm also playing the Fey Dragons talent so that your dots have a chance to summon in Fey Dragons. You can see them spawning on the left of the screen. They're blasting the target, increasing damage that they take, and you're just fishing for procs from your Star Surges to amplify the damage, and boom, look at that crack. 90k full moon just straight out of the sky. So what's really nice about it is that you've got those burst moments like you had in the past that you're setting up for. But then you've also got these windows of opportunities that present themselves. If you get yourself in a good position, bait somebody around the corner, get some crowd control into the healer, during those random moments, you can also get a lot of damage out. With the talents that you see on your screen right now, I think I ended up rearranging them a bit because I realized that this one right here, Waning Twilight, which is when you have 3 periodic effects, it's going to increase your damage and healing on them by 8%. I decided to not run with Wild Mushroom. In PvP, it's just Wild Mushroom did not end up the way that I expected it to. I thought it was going to be on the ground, put like a snare circle on the ground. It's not doing that. It just goes down the ground, explodes, and applies a snare to the target, which can be dispelled. And the damage output of them was very minor, at least in PvP, to the point where I decided to drop them, get things like when you activate Eclipse, you get increased crit percent. But here you can see the standard setup, Solar Beam the healer, pop all your cooldowns, try and filter in a Starfire or a Wrath after your Star Surges have stacked up the buff damage onto your casted spell, and then you can chain those together for massive burst. That got pretty much every cooldown. from the opposing side. Balanced Druid is looking like a really strong spec for things like solo shuffle. We've seen that represented as well in the recent tournament that was run in Shadowlands. It's just because Balanced Druids can, functionally work with every class. Now, if you were to play them with every class in a team environment where you're fighting RMP, their comps are probably not the greatest, but when you're just mix and matching a lot of comps together, Balanced Druid is actually really powerful, mostly because of the way that Cyclone works to stop healing, so you can kind of carry the team. Cyclone targets low, peel for your allies, support with off healing, have a lot of direct damage and burst damage. I actually really enjoyed where it ended up in terms of tuning. It was looking maybe really devastating at the initial point of it, because it was like nerf, 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 nerf. And I'm like, oh god, what's going to be going on with Boomkin? Like, it's going to be terrible now. Like, I feel like it's just been nothing but nerfed. But having played with it here, and as you can watch on the screen, I'm able to create a lot of pressure. I'm fighting a healer, Dilbar, rank 1 shaman, tournament competitor shaman. I'm creating pressure on the board. Look at the damage onto 2 targets right now. One at 10%, the other one almost falling over. So it definitely felt a lot stronger than I had expected to. I was really looking at it like the sky was falling. I'm excited to see how it works in solo shuffle. The one thing that you do get to pick up in a trade-off for that crowd control loss that I talked about earlier is that getting things like Heart of the Wild or Nature's Vigil for healing for your team. Nature's Vigil was doing a lot of healing. It was definitely a recommended pickup. Heart of the Wild was really good for emergency moments when you need to go into bear form, because you're going to notice that your frenzied regen is a lot less powerful than it was in previous expansions. You can't just always rely on bear form to save you. At least I couldn't. Even during Heart of the Wild, it was not necessarily a guaranteed survival tool. The only thing I wish that had been done is that it doesn't really feel like there's a PvP Starfall build with the talents that are on the tree that buff Starfall. It's like Lunar Shrapnel that like cleaves trash mobs next to each other, which I'm sure is going to be really powerful in things like Mythic Plus with trash mobs and stuff like that. But in PvP, I'm feeling like the Starfall build is dead. They've removed Stellar Drift, so our move casting during Starfall, which then also means that one of my favorite PvP talents that summons those star bombs from the sky, Starburst, is probably getting phased out. You're going to be wanting to incorporate this playstyle of blasting out Star Surges to buff your casted spells, finding an opportunity to cast them, and then cracking down on the target when you've got crowd control on the enemy healer, or maybe even going after the enemy healer, that type of deal. You do get to pick up Renewal and Wild Charge together, which you couldn't previously. Here you can see in this position, I've popped Heart of the Wild, and this is where your extra healing is going to come into. You can drop a Rejuve and a big Swift Mend and top off your ally during that Heart of the Wild moment, much the same that a Mists of Pandaria Balanced Druid would have expected. So it's kind of a mixture and a merger of multiple different expansions all coming together for Balanced Druid. And maybe it's fair that the crowd control was toned down. Again, I don't want to come from a bias point perspective here, but if I'd bash on top of incapping Roar with the amount of pressure that I'm able to push out here, it probably would be overpowered. You're also going to notice that the fast Cyclone Honor talent was nerfed significantly, honestly, to the point where I decided to not take it. I may decide to take Precognition instead. This is a talent where if you fake an interrupt, you get immunity to crowd control and 15% haste. That's going to be a really good way of kind of juicing up all your dots to proc Fairy Dragons, as well as being able to free cast these hard casted spells that I talked about that I think are going to become increasingly more important throughout the expansion, and always just rotating between eclipses. You want to be going like back and forth in order to proc your Fury of Elune. I still need to experiment a bit with Full Moon towards the bottom of the tree, the one that you actually cast rather than the Orbit Breaker one. I'm just leaning more towards Fury of Elune because Astral Power Generation is so difficult to get, and it can be tough to cast something like a Full Moon. So here at the end of the match, I'm trying to go for CC on the Shaman. We've Solar Beamed him, but he grounded my Root, and honestly that ground is probably going to win him the game. I get the Cyclone, but not able to win the race in time. The intensity in solo shuffle, because dampening starts right away, is really nice. I think that dampening is actually a good way of amplifying the intensity of the arena match in a way that's not just like, oh, I'm instantly one shot and I'm dead. It's like this slowly creeping intensity where healing's going down and down and down and down, and you got to get something going. You can't just sit behind the pillar the entire game and wait for a big omega burst moment to be able to win. So I'm honestly very excited for solo shuffle. I actually enjoyed my time at Balanced Druid, which had been kind of a back back and forth, hit or miss. But I'm going to be playing it more and more. I'm going to be playing every class, covering every class here on the YouTube channel. But of course, I know a lot of you know me for Balanced Druid, so I wanted to get a video out there covering the Balanced Druid specifically, give you my initial thoughts on it. What's it looking in terms of strengths? What are the fun and exciting things coming to it? Also, what are the downsides? Is it something you take into consideration? And try and cover the whole scope of the specialization. But having said that, I hope that you've enjoyed this video, got something out of it, and I will catch you in the next one.